Welcome, Peter. How are you?
Very good. Thanks, Scott. I'm very good.
Good. I'd like to start with thanking you on behalf of Ballarat Regional Beekeepers in supporting our initiative of taking this online, basically. We had you lined up as a guest speaker before the COVID-19 slipped into place. So we thought what a great way to trial a friend of the club with with a meeting this on this format. So thank you for helping us. I guess for the people playing at home, I'm going to introduce you. So Peter McDonald, as a beekeeper, has spoken at the club before previously as a beekeeper. Today we've invited Peter along as Peter McDonald, Chair of AHBIC. AHBIC stands for Australian Honeybee Industry Council. Peter's been a commercial beekeeper since 2004, I believe.
Yes, full time since 2004.
Yeah, full time. Been around bees your whole life because you are a fourth or fifth generation beekeeper.
Fifth generation.
Fifth generation, thank you. It runs deep in the McDonald family. McDonald Honey primarily is a bulk honey production company with small amounts of pollination services. And I believe one of Peter's passions is also bee biosecurity. Would that be correct in saying? You're part of the national biosecurity code of practice team that helped develop that. You're part of the National Bee Pest Surveillance Program.
Yes.
And I also believe you're on the
state quarantine response team.
Peter, what do you find gets you out of bed as far as beekeeping goes? What's your favourite part of beekeeping?
Favourite part is, I really like that it's an outside job. That's important to me. I enjoy being outside. Favourite part of it, there's many favourites and they change time, and that's probably one of the good things about it. It is constantly changing. Even though beekeeping and beekeeping seasons are very similar and they follow the similar pattern, every year is different, and every year we're going somewhere different. So you see a wide variety of places, a wide variety of environments and different conditions, and no one year is the same as another. So that's the variety really appeals to me.
You're here today as the chair of AHBIC.
Yep.
Can you explain to the members of BRB the functions of AHBIC and probably rolling?
I can do that. So, and that gives you a visual representation of what AHBIC is. So AHBIC is the peak national body for the beekeeping community in Australia. So it is the top body. It represents the honeybee industry or the honeybee community at the national level. We provide advocacy and representation on all things to do with honeybees within Australia. We try and coordinate the many different members and different associations of AHBIC, and they're listed on your screen there, and they represent a whole heap of the different segments of the honeybee industry. They represent beekeepers that specialise in honey production across every state, pollination, queen bees and queen bee production, the honey packers and marketers, the recreational beekeeping groups, and the affiliated groups as well. So we've got a wide variety of different sectors, and we aim to coordinate all them and then coordinate all the other different groups or all our strategic partners that we work with to try and get things done that improve the lot of all beekeepers in Australia. Now, whether this is professional beekeepers or whether this is professional or commercial, whatever you want to call them, or recreational or hobbyist, whatever you want to call them there as well. We represent and deal with beekeepers. We deal with research bodies, AgriFutures, Horticulture Innovation, the CRC. We deal with the Ween Bee Foundation as a charity. 8 different departments of agriculture around Australia, the federal one and the state agricultural departments. Our QA company that aims to give us QA, Plant Health Australia, which manages a lot of the work on biosecurity that we've put in place. Our international partner in Appomondia, the different members of AHBIC and the friends of AHBIC, which provide us money, and we also, of course, deal with the public. So there's a wide variety of people and groups that we're communicating with and dealing with all the time that they're all aiming to do things for beekeeping. We're aiming to try and to coordinate them so everyone's doing everything in a structured fashion and working together so that we can actually achieve things that improve beekeepers all throughout Australia. So that's basically AHBIC in a nutshell. I could talk for hours and the different stuff we do. That's sort of in a nutshell. Role within AHBIC, I'm the chairman at the moment. So I the chair position, sign on for 2 years. I've been on there now for over 18 months. So I'm running up to this July is the end of my term. So I lead the organisation. I try and coordinate and get everything going and with the executive team to ensure the day-to-day running of the organisation. The executive team with 5 other elected people, volunteers from around the honeybee industry, and 1 full-time CEO to do the work. So that's AHBIC in a nutshell. Yep.
So how can AHBIC help recreational beekeepers, and how can recreational beekeepers in turn help AHBIC?
Yeah, good questions. So a few things there. So AHBIC has, we're in a state of change as well, and it's the last few years we've sort of changed. So we've had representation in terms of the recreational group. That's a major component of the beekeeping community. So all the recreational beekeeper, rough statistics, probably about 80% of the actual beekeepers are recreational and running roughly 20% of the hives. But then only 20% of the beekeepers are commercial, but unashamedly, yes, we do support a large part of our efforts go to addressing things that are for the professional commercial sector. And that is purely because that is the sector that actually built AHBIC and built the industry structure that we have today, the national and the state-based structure. And they're actually providing the bulk of the funding that actually allows us to do some work. But we recognise that the recreational hobbyist sector is vitally important. So we've got representation there. And as a matter of fact, we're actually progressing through a process now where the largest recreational beekeeping group, the Amateur Beekeeping Association New South Wales, is going through an application process to become a direct member into AHBIC right at this point in time. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll have a success in that fairly soon. So what do we do that actually helps recreational beekeepers? I think the major thing that can be seen throughout all of Australia and the major sort of thing that we focus on, one of the big jobs is biosecurity. It is the major component. Yeah. Where our main aim is to protect Australia from exotic pests and diseases. We've got that poster child of Varroa destructor out there and Varroa jacobsoni, the little brother. The big threats out there, we've set in place a series of structures, and you touched on them before, the bee pest surveillance program, but also got our code of practice, and we've also, as part of that code of practice, we've got our bee biosecurity officers that are employed around Australia in the different states. The one here in Victoria is Ali. It's a visible example of the work that we do. So we've actually organised all that to actually come together and worked in partnership with all the different agricultural departments around Australia to actually pull that together. And that's the main focus, is to make sure that every beekeeper is good at biosecurity, so we can be as prepared as possible if and when Varroa comes, but also then have tools in place to actually keep it out in the first place.
Yeah.
So in terms of that, so that's a direct and major impact for recreational beekeepers. Another major thing that we've worked on for many years is in terms of the education. The certificate level courses that are available right now through the different registered training organisations. Basically, the structure and format for that have been developed in conjunction with RTOs, but also then put in place by AHBIC in terms of getting it up and running. So there is certificate level courses, which allows then further education, further progression for people with more information. So there are two major things that we see as are a great benefit towards recreational beekeepers. We heavily believe that in supporting the commercial and professional side of beekeeping as well, we're also helping recreational beekeepers by making sure there is a viable and successful industry there, so there's a pathway for people to grow.
Yep.
So not everyone within the Ballarat Regional Beekeepers group will progress through past recreational, but some will go semi-professional, some will go fully professional. And it's our job to actually make sure that is a viable pathway. So in the longer term, you draw the bigger picture, it's for Australia's benefit, there is a viable honeybee industry there, and it's our job to actually make sure it is viable so that then we can help produce great honey and help provide pollination services and contribute to food security and the national well-being, and probably never so important as in times like today with COVID, in terms of making sure the food keeps coming.
How can recreational beekeepers help AHBIC?
So, really good question. Yep. So what recreational beekeepers can do to help AHBIC, they can do the same as what everyone else, every beekeeper in Australia can do. They can lend a hand through their time and also money. Every beekeeping group through Australia is largely run by volunteers. Some, like AHBIC, have a little bit of funds to be able to employ someone, but nearly everyone else is volunteers, and every organisation has the need for people to volunteer their time and effort in order to make sure things keep running, and also then some money to actually support so we can actually pay for things that actually happen. So it's critical that wherever you can actually contribute, and we greatly value every contribution, yes, please put forward time and or money. So in particular with AHBIC, the organisation I'm representing at the moment, we've got a Friends of AHBIC program where you can actually directly support us, and we will thank you and recognise you and give you a level and recognise that level within our newsletter in terms of what level of support you're providing.
Yeah, I believe Ballarat Regional Beekeepers are a friend of AHBIC. So just to...
Ballarat Group is indeed.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
In your position as chair of AHBIC, what do you see as some of the biggest challenges facing beekeeping in Australia?
One of our biggest issues in terms of AHBIC is communication. So this is what we have to do, and it's been a struggle constantly. We have been so focused as a national organisation on doing the things that need to be done, that to a certain extent we have failed at communicating that well within the beekeeping community. So that's a major focus for us and a major challenge to one, keep doing the things that need to be done, keep protecting biosecurity, developing education programs, developing QA, all a number of other things, getting research done. All that's got to keep going, but we've also got to be communicating better what we're doing. So we've got to make sure that every organisation, every beekeeper is aware of each other, aware that there is a whole network of groups out there, encourage every group to be participating and cooperating together so that we can all push forward together and make sure that our industry or our community is successful and viable. Getting actual action from governments on a number of key issues. So here in Victoria, we're actually in a pretty good place in one of the major issues we have around Australia and has been for years, is just making sure that we still have good access to the natural floral resources that are out there. Victoria's in a great place, Tassie's in a great place, a lot of the other states are in a pretty poor place. And so we need to actually convince governments that they need to better recognise the importance of beekeeping, and especially in terms of food security, and then they actually need to take action towards that recognition and actually provide us some access. and greater access. And the big key one, the pointy end of the problem here is in Queensland, where they've got a big issue where they're going to be kicked out of national parks at the end of 2024. So that's going to have a massive impact in terms of beekeeping in Queensland, massive impact on the growth industries in pollination up there in terms of avocados and blueberries and melons and macadamias and a lot of key things. So that's, yeah, actually, we've been talking for a number of years, ever since AHBIC was formed and before, but actually getting action out of governments is a trickier prospect. So they're our two biggies: communications, getting action from governments.
AHBIC has taken a fairly large leadership role post the 2019 and 2020 bushfires. Can you tell us a little bit more about what AHBIC's doing to help the beekeepers post bushfires?
I can. So this has been a tricky one. This has been the worst, as many people know. It's been all over the media before COVID took over. So bushfires has been the biggest thing that's hit for a number of years, just purely because of the breadth, and so many states hit at once. Bushfires affect us every single year. Last year, Tassie was hit, and this year we've had 4 states that have been adversely affected in quite a big way. But also this year, Tassie's been pretty protected this year. It hasn't had too much, but West Australia has also had some. So our job, what we've been trying to do is coordinate all the different states, get reports back from all the different states as the impacts in the different states, because each, as you're aware, same as what happens with COVID, there's a national issue in terms of bushfires and the impact on the national situation, but it's all basically run by the states. So the state governments, and we've got our state beekeeping associations, they've been coordinating and trying to talk together, and we're trying to get information out of both and get reporting and also reporting back both ways. So we're getting information from governments and places where we can actually, where beekeepers can get help from, communicate that back to beekeepers through their state bodies or directly through our newsletter, get information from our state associations and or direct from beekeepers, and communicate that to governments as the impact. So one of the major ways we were doing, which is another way where COVID has really stuffed us up, has been we had planned a bushfire recovery workshop. So we were going to have a day and a half workshop with key peoples in all the state governments, key people within the federal government, other key stakeholders, sit down and explain exactly how we've been impacted and show them the breadth of the impact, and then actually provide solutions and say, here's some concrete ways you can really help us. COVID came along and put that off, but we've still got a process where that's working through. So we're working through a process now where remotely interviews are being conducted with people, and then so we're documenting that, going to pull that together and then be able to put that in front of the different governments in different states and saying, here is the impact where we've been smashed. Here's some ideas for where you can actually help us. And one of our major aims is as well to hit on that resource issue as well, is that so much forest and flora resource has been lost for a number of years. Really, if there's some way that they can actually open up other countries, that other areas that have previously been restricted, that would be a very low cost and a very simple way they could actually help us out. Yep. So that's a couple of ways. Our other major way is through a hive aid program. It was identified pretty quick in terms of what was going on with the bushfires, and they were compounded what was already happening in terms of the drought. That really some of the beekeepers out there were really hurting and needed some sort of financial aid. And so we've actually gone and partnered with the Rural Aid Organisation and created an aid program called Hive Aid. And so that's just a way to actually help both ways, help beekeepers that are directly affected, but also provide a place where people who aren't affected but want to help, just help bees in general, they've got an actual place where they can actually put their money and know that that money will go direct to beekeepers no matter where they are, and they can be supported through this program.
What aid is being delivered to beekeepers in need? Is it cash grants or is it activities?
Both,
Yep.
or all of that. So basically, Hive Aid as a concept was only dreamed up or thought about at the last year after the first impact of the Queensland bushfires and just when the northern New South Wales fires were started. So October last year, come up with the concept of creating a long-term aid program because bushfires and drought hit all the time. So the aim is to have it as a long-term program. The aim is also to have it run through a professional organisation that can actually provide cash, it can actually provide counselling, it can actually provide product, whatever the people need. And so that's why we went with Rural Aid as the operator for the Hive Aid program. But we're now actually getting some products that are actually available to beekeepers as well, rather than just money. And so we've got pollen supplement or replacement available. Some companies are donating their product rather than money. We've had queen bees and nukes that have been offered, and we've put them in contact with the Hive Aid people. And so Hive Aid then will take those offers of help, and then they've got the beekeepers on the other side that they're wanting help, and then they just connect those two together and let them sort it out themselves. So that's the way we're trying to get the aid out. As at the 16th of April, we've had 124 beekeepers nationally register for help, and these beekeepers have been through all the states in Australia except for Tasmania at this point. 11 of those are still being validated and checked to see whether they're eligible. As of right now, which is, where are we? So Saturday afternoon at 3 p.m, $259,942.51 has been contributed through the Hive Aid program. And this is, and that's the Rural Aid website, and just simply Hive Aid behind that. It's been a good program. It's evolving over time, and it will do that. So it's a good program. We're aiming to be longer term. We're looking for more money. So people want to help out beekeepers that are still being affected by fire out there, because some of these people have now got areas where they can't take their bees to anymore because there's no flowers left there. And some of the trees where the majority of the source of pollen and nectar are, then some of them won't recover for 5 to 10 years, at least, some even longer. So it's going to be, quite a period where they're going to be struggling.
So post bushfires,
yep.
How does AHBIC, or part of AHBIC's brief is the pollination service? So one of the arms is the pollination group. How do they see that this year's pollination season for almonds is going to go? And is this putting any other pollination services under stress as well?
There will be an impact on provision of pollination services this year. I've no doubt about that. What size that impact will be is how long is a piece of string at the moment. We've got a massive impact in terms of the floral resources. So the various beekeepers are coping in whatever way they see fit. Some are just sitting their beehives around their home, and they're feeding them with pollen replacement and sugar syrup because there's no flowers left. Others are travelling thousands of kilometres. We've had beekeepers that we've found some sites for with the recent messmate flowering in around Daylesford and Ballarat. And so we've found them, shared some of our sites with both beekeepers from Queensland and northern New South Wales. So some of them have travelled for a couple of thousand kilometres to shift their bees to where there is floral resources. And some of them have still got bees. The Queenslander guy that we hosted still got a couple of loads of bees down here at the moment. So they're coping, and they're trying to keep their bees as healthy as possible. So the real test as to whether that will work and what the impact will be felt in July and August when we're getting close to the almond pollination. Almonds will be impacted the most because they are the first real pollination user within the season. And that's in the last month of winter. So it's a tough time for bees to get up and going. The other crops that require bees for pollination will be in a better place because things will be a bit warmer, and we've got a chance to actually start building the bees a bit bit later. But almonds will be the biggest one affected, but also as well, there's other crops like avocados and blueberries, macadamias are all fairly early in the season as well, and they're more up in Queensland, and so that they could be adversely affected as well.
Okay.
A lot of this impact is compounded in different areas, not just because of the bushfires though, but because of the drought. Queensland this past year has had an actual horrible year, one to forget. Bushfires and drought, and they've still got drought there affecting now. The drought is definitely not broken. New South Wales has had a terrible year, so the beekeepers there generally are doing it pretty tough. Victoria and Western Australia, they both had a pretty good year, a good to great year actually. Some areas, and South Australia it varies. So they've had a generally okay year. So bees from those sort of areas, WA, South Australia, Victoria should be pretty good generally. But New South Wales and Queensland, they're going to be up and down. Some will be good and some will be tough. So the actual impact we'll find out soon enough.
Or has AHBIC seen any change or any discussion about the sale of honey during this COVID-19 process?
The sale of honey, it's sort of up and down. I mean, there's different areas of the sale. So direct to beekeeper sales, that seems to be up, but it has been up for a couple of years. And so that has been improving, and I think that'll improve over time. Also, supermarket sales, they've generally been up and increasing, but that's also been held back to a certain extent. The sales are going well. There hasn't been an actual run on it. There's been no panic buying on honey, so honey's been there, but there has been shortages of sugar in some supermarkets. So honey it's the original sugar, so it is being used as well. So sales are generally up a bit, and so that's been quite good. But you've got to measure that as well with where we've had a shortage of production nationally. As I said, New South Wales is the biggest honey producing state. They've had a terrible year. Queensland is a big honey producing state, terrible year as well. Victoria's had a great year. But generally the national stockpile of honey, if you will be down, and could potentially be down for a number of years, given that a lot of where the bushfires were heavy honey producing areas, and so that will have a flow-on impact over the next 4 or 5 years at least. So generally production will be down, unless we get a run of spectacular years in all the other states, and that rarely happens. But fingers crossed. But there is a really positive vibe about honey. It's natural, it's good for you, and there's research going on at the moment to actually point out that a little bit more. So more to come on that one. And there's shortages through drought and bushfire, and so that'll still be talked about, and so that will help promote honey and supporting the honey industry. It will be a thing that we will still keep talking about, because if you're supporting the honey industry, you're actually supporting the pollination and food production, because if the honey bit isn't there, then the bees just aren't there to actually do the pollination. So we really need to keep promoting it, as we will, and really good vibe about honey. It's a good product, and we think will go pretty well.
That's excellent. All right. Thanks for joining us for this part of the evening.
Yep.
I do believe we'll go into a Q&A session now with the members. Yep. Hopefully we'll get some interesting questions coming your way, and then during this process. We would normally hand you a little gift, but we'll have to postpone that one till later. I guess, because I can't say this after the Q&A session, I'll say it now. Thanks for your time, Peter. And we'll hopefully see you on the other side of COVID-19.
We will no doubt catch up, and thank you to the Ballarat Group for inviting me. It's a pleasure to talk about bees and beekeeping, and especially as well talk about AHBIC, the role it provides, the essential role it provides for the whole industry. because as I said, you know, we need to communicate that more. I mean, the beekeeping community has grown out of sight, and you are a perfect example of that. And we need to be on the front foot and actually explaining what's there already, how it can actually help you, and then how you can actually help us as well. So we can all, yeah, make $1 gazillion out of bees, or just be the happiest people in the world.